If you are thinking about getting a hair transplant done in Pune, you must know the cost of hair transplant. And I'm going to talk about different rates which are there in Pune, especially rates per graft. This can range from as little as 10 rupees per graft to as high as 300 rupees per graft also. And you're going to know the difference between 10 rupees per graft, why it is so cheap, why it can be risky to go for 10 rupees per graft. And you don't really have to pay for 300 rupees per graft. You're not going to get anything additional there. And why the sweet spot of hair transplant charges is somewhere in the range of 35 rupees per graft to 70 rupees per graft. We're going to also talk about additional details which are generally not told by any centers, like GST. These are extra charges, the follow-up charges, the maintenance charges, as well as we can offer some EMIs, and which can make your financial options a little bit easier and budgeting options a little bit easier for you. So we're going to discuss all that in this video. So just stay tuned and go ahead. First and foremost, let me break it down into three different categories. The budget options, like really low cost options like 10 rupees per graft up to 25 rupees per graft. And these are something I would say are risky options. And the sweet spot, that is 35 rupees per graft to 70 rupees per graft. And the expensive option of 300 rupees per graft also, which I would say is like a celebrity kind of an option. So let's go dive in for the tier 1 option, that is 10 rupees to 30 rupees per graft. Now this is something which sounds too good to be true. You cannot do a surgery at this low rate. So how come the people are offering at this low charge? The basic difference is basically they are doing their hair transplants getting done by technicians. No hair transplant surgeon is ever going to be charging this less. So if you're going to go for this cheap 10 rupees to 30 rupees per graft, it's generally the hair transplant technicians, not the surgeons who will do your hair transplant. Also, sometimes you are not going to speak with the actual hair transplant surgeon even for your consultation. There is some salesperson who will talk to you. And results, no guarantees of result. How are they going to look like? No guarantee that they will look exactly natural. They will be affordable, they will be extremely cheap, but sometimes going that cheap does have its own cost. You might require a repair procedure if you go for such a low cost, and you might get a transplant which looks pretty unnatural. So I would really advise everyone seeking for such low rates to steer clear of these kind of options. Apart from this, the tier 1 option of low costing also has a problem with OT sterilization, because maintaining a OT is costly thing, and sometimes they skip on it. They sometimes do end up cutting corners, and what happens because of that, there is a very high chance they are going to use instruments which are not very standardized, not very high quality. And of course, OT sterilization and cleanliness can be a problem with these kind of low cost centers. So this increases risk of getting bad results, and not only that, it can be quite dangerous because you can get infections because of all these cutting corners kind of a thing. Real example, if somebody is going for like 2500 graft, the cost typically at these centers would be something like maybe 30 or 40,000 rupees. So that is really cheap, and it also should raise some alarms in your head that why they are operating at such a low cost. It's obviously because cutting corners is the reality. Tier 2, I would say, is the sweet spot or the Goldilocks zone, where general costing it starts from 35 rupees per graft to up to 70 rupees per graft. At this cost range, most of the times your hair transplant surgeon himself is going to do the procedure. Here also there are some parts which are given outsourced, like implantation part can be outsourced to the technicians, but generally these technicians are a little bit trained, so they work under the guidance of a hair transplant surgeon. So it is not as if hair transplant surgeon is not involved. My center actually lies within this range, somewhere in my range of costing is somewhere from 35 rupees per graft to 45 rupees per graft. The difference is I am actively involved in the hair transplant implantation process as well, because I tend to use implant pens. Now you're going to get excellent service here, you're going to get the best quality results. You also relax that the procedure is done in utmost sterile environments. The surgery room is clean, and there are latest instrumentation. These make sure that you get your best results. And of course, in this range, the surgeons, they have vested interest in giving you the best results, because most of the times we work on word of mouth. So these are the centers where you get most bang for your buck. A realistic cost for about 2500 to 3000 grafts would range somewhere from 75,000 to about 1,50,000. That's quite a big range because every surgeon has their own experiences, and if somebody is more experienced, they're going to charge a little bit on the higher side. But I would say these are the range for average count of 3000 grafts, somewhere from 90,000 to about 1,50,000. Coming to the tier 3 range, which is somewhere from 100 rupees per graft to 300 rupees per graft, which sounds ridiculous because and if you don't know the centers, there are centers which charge that much. But you know what, these centers are meant for celebrities kind of, because I think what happens is a lot of celebrities get their procedures done from this center. So there are people who want to get their own hair transplant at the centers where their favorite celebrity has gotten a transplant done. Are you going to get the best of the transplant results in these centers? Not likely. You are going to get the same result as the tier 2 where the surgeon himself is doing everything. It's just that you will be given a celebrity red carpet kind of a treatment, and you also are somewhat in an awe or thinking that, okay, my favorite celebrity got a hair transplant done here and I'm getting it done here. So that's the psychological part. So anybody who has that kind of money to spend, of course, these kind of centers are for you. And if you want to know a typical cost for about 3000 grafts, that would range for somewhere 2.5 lakhs to up to 7 lakhs for 3000 grafts. I have seen centers which charge up to 15 lakhs also. So if you have that kind of money in your hand, that's the center for you. Just remember, you're not going to get anything special results. Hair transplant results for type tier 2 as well as tier 3 are exactly the same. I'm going to briefly talk about something which you should know, because there are so many people who come from US, Australia, countries in the Europe to do hair transplants in India. And how does the cost of hair transplant fare in contrast to these centers? Now in US, an average cost of hair transplant is generally somewhere in the range of 8,000 to maybe 20,000 US dollars, and this is like 16 lakhs for a hair transplant. And this is average. This is not even a celebrity center. So a basic hair transplant itself is pretty costly in countries like US or Europe or Australia. Difference, I would say, almost like a competition in the world for India is the Turkey centers. But here also the costing is almost similar to the cost which is offered in India at tier 2 levels. The problem is there are hair transplant centers which operate like hair transplant mills, and they're notoriously called as hair transplant mills because there are rows of patients. It's almost like an assembly line in a factory where you get a hair transplant done. And you must have seen the videos where airports and the aeroplanes are full with people coming from Turkey. They have all gotten their hair transplant done. These kind of things do happen there. The results are not guaranteed, because I personally am repairing so many cases of hair transplant which have gotten done from the Turkey, and I'm not repairing them on a monthly basis. So it can be a good thing for you that you're going for Turkey for a hair transplant. You're going to be traveling, maybe some touristy kind of things you are going to do. But when it comes down to hair transplant results, there is no guarantee. Of course, there is a problem when you do your hair transplant in foreign country like that. There is a big problem of follow-ups, and not very sure that they are going to be giving you that kind of attention after your hair transplant is done. Like here, we keep follow-up with WhatsApp continuously with my patients across the world. But I have not seen such kind of a post-operative service in places like Turkey. Just to repeat what I've already said, in Pune, the hair transplant cost, risky thing would be about 25,000 to 50,000. Really, I would advise you against going for such a hair transplant. Tier 2, I would say, is the best for most people, and the cost of this center range from about 90,000 to about 1.5 lakhs for an average of 3,000 grafts. And if you want to have a celebrity treatment, then you can go for like more than 3 lakhs per surgery to up to 15 lakhs. It's up to you where your favorite celebrity has gotten it done. You can find out on internet, just get it done there. But you're not going to get a special hair transplant or not going to get extra results because just you're paying more in this section. So let me just reiterate the tier 1 part, tier 2 part and tier 3 part. Now, most of the times tier 1 is technician run centers. And why they do technician runs? Because technicians don't charge a lot. That's why they can reduce the cost. They use inferior kind of devices for getting their hair transplants. And the compromise of sterility is a notorious concern. You might end up in infections. It can be very dangerous that you get your hair transplant from here. It looks cheap on paper, but you might end up paying more for repairs and management of infections later on. And there's nothing like planning or experienced people taking care that you are getting your best natural results in these kind of centers. Tier 2, I would say, is the most bang for your buck, and most of the steps are done by hair transplant surgeons, like hair transplant in hairline design. They take care specifically how much grafts are going to be placed in the hairline. They ensure that your hairline appears the most natural, and this is my center operates at this range, Tier 2. And in celebrity centers, it's like you are getting your celebrity like treatment, maybe a red carpet, maybe a chauffeur service for getting you back and forth from the cars. If you don't want all that, really speaking, yeah. And see, there are people in India have a lot of money, so they can go for these kind of centers. I don't mind it. It's just that you have to understand you're not going to get extra results of hair transplant. You're going to get a celebrity treatment in all those extra costs. Now coming to some hidden costs, there are 2 or 3 different types of hidden costs. Now some centers, they mention GST clearly on their website. As you know, hair transplant has GST attached to it, and GST is 18%. So in an average case of 90,000, you're going to pay up to 14 or 15,000 GST. So this additional 18%, you should be clearly asking the centers how much is this, because later on there should be no issues with the costing. Another type of extra charge is like a maintenance charge. These include follow-up charges, the charges which consultants of hair transplant, they charge for getting your follow-up done. At my center, I don't really charge for follow-ups, and I keep my follow-ups completely free of cost. This is because I want my patients to come back to me, visit me at multiple intervals after the hair transplant is done. There are so many patients of mine who come back even after 5 years, 6 years, and they get their second or third transplant done from me, and they don't have to worry about paying for follow-up fees. And the next type of maintenance charge would be taking minoxidil or finasteride. Now this is sort of unavoidable thing, but it's not very high cost. Monthly, I would say you're going to end up paying about 500 to 800 rupees for these medications. The third type of maintenance, or rather not a maintenance, but something which is extra when it comes to hair transplant, is the blood tests which are done, and these are generally done from a pathology lab. And these can range from 2,500 rupees for up to 5,000 rupees. This is just one-time cost, which is generally these tests are done a day or 2 days before the hair transplant surgery is done. That's an additional cost. Another costing, if you're coming especially from out of state, is something like traveling costs and the costs which are required for hotels and the stay. Another type of cost is some clinics do make PRP as a mandatory thing. So they're going to charge for the PRP per session. That can be from 5,000 rupees to maybe 6,000 rupees. At my center, I generally give 3 PRPs after hair transplant as free in the package. You don't have to pay for PRP at my center. And on top of that, if somebody wants to get a hair transplant and PRP, 3 PRPs are already free. Another PRPs, if somebody wants that extra PRPs are needed, I do it at a discounted rate. My general rate of PRP is not charged for my hair transplant patients. They are charged at a discounted rate. Now, talking about EMI, EMIs have become so common, and because of this, the hair transplant has become really affordable, especially for those looking for Tier 2 services, where the cost of hair transplant is an average of 90,000 to up to 1,50,000 to up to 2 lakhs. Because you can get EMIs up to 24 months, the per month cost, and that too, those are charged without interest at some places. Every center has a different tie-up with the EMI company. So make sure you ask about this EMI charges, because you want to pay monthly charge at a minimum without any interest for up to 24 months. So the overall transplant has become quite affordable nowadays. So coming to what to look for in a Tier 2 center, which is the most recommended from my side, is credentials of the surgeon. The surgeon should be MBBS and having a degree in dermatology or plastic surgery, at a minimum of 5 years of experience, more than 500 procedures done, and a real portfolio on their website of pre and post photographs, which should impress you, really speaking, and genuine Google reviews. Now, one of the things which I want to talk about Google reviews is not the number that you should go after, because in this day and era, you can purchase Google reviews as bulk. You should really read the reviews. Even if the reviews are less, you should read them and you can find out which are authentic and which are not. Real patients will always write about their experiences, and it will feel not written by a chat GPT or something, and just it won't be simply a star. It will be a detailed explanation of the person's own experience in the Google reviews. So look for the centers which are giving you that kind of a thing. While doing a consultation, they will be very clear about their transparency of the costing. There will be no hidden charges, and if you ask them, they are open for all sorts of discussions. They will clearly explain everything to you. I would classify my center as in these tier 2 centers, and if you come to me, you'll obviously find out that you are going to get the most transparent kind of a treatment. The consultation also is roughly 35 to 40 minutes, so you get your doubts cleared. It's all open, and you can see my patient pre and post photographs. I'll explain all the details of the hair transplant in the consultation. So what are the red flags that you should avoid? Avoid tier 1 centers where the costing of a hair transplant is less than 25 rupees per graft. It's a risky thing. Also, sometimes if you ask them who is going to do the surgery, they might tell you that surgeon does some part of it, but most of it is done by technicians. So that's kind of a red flag for you. Giving you unrealistic kind of expectations, giving you deals or on-table discounts that you book it now, repeatedly calling that you come and do the procedures with us. All these are generally red flags of hair transplant, which are just commercialized and they are after your money. So when you go to a tier 2 kind of a center, or for that matter any kind of a center, just be sure to ask these questions to the hair transplant surgeon or whoever is taking your consultation, that who is the person going to perform my surgery. And the answer always should be the hair transplant surgeon, through and through. If somebody says no, we have technicians who do all that, and forget it, it's not for you. How many procedures are they doing it daily? That also is something you should ask. If they're doing 5 procedures daily, you are not going to be there. They will not be able to give you full attention. No center which does 5 surgeries in a day is able to give that extra care or attention to their patients. Also, centers doing less than maybe 1 or 2 surgeries per month is generally a starting center, or a center which has a little less experience. You want some healthy middle ground in here, like daily procedures, daily 1 procedure, or maximum of 2 procedures per day. And ask what is included in the quoted price, whether extra charges are there. You should be clear about all that. And also ask the possibility of what is your graft survival rate and how successful are your hair transplants. You can ask about the previous hair transplant patients, whether you can talk to them or not. Sometimes centers offer these services. Like I personally, sometimes when the patient is very apprehensive, I make them talk to my previous patients. Just that you need to give me some time, because not everybody wants to openly talk about their hair transplants, so I need to arrange patients accordingly. But if you ask me, I can always give their numbers and just connect with them. You can have a chat with them. My ex-patients are more than willing to talk about their hair transplant journey because they are quite happy about it. In conclusion, if you are worried about the costing, how much you're going to pay, if you do it in a tier 2 center, which would be my recommendation, the best procedure costing is, the basic cost is somewhere going to be from 90,000 to 1,50,000, and maybe follow-up charges. If some centers are charging for follow-up, maybe 1,000 rupees per follow-up, and some medical treatments about 500 to 800 rupees per month. Lab testing and all that, maybe 2,500 to 5,000. That is done before the surgery. And if there are some hidden costs which I don't know about, in total you might end up paying somewhere in the range of 1 lakh to about 1.5 lakhs. So just consider that when you're planning for your hair transplant. In this range you are going to get the best results. Set aside some amount which is required for medical treatment in the post-transplant phase, but this is generally spread out per month, and it's never going to be a lump sum cost. It's mostly for the medical treatment like minoxidil, finasteride, about 800-900 per month, but that's about it. I hope this video has helped you in deciding your budget for a hair transplant, and I hope you have learned something new about the hair transplant costing. And if you like what I've said, like the videos which are descriptive like that, just like this video, turn on the notification and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next one.